war and peace, love and death. Life is a petty cycle, folks. In the midst of conflict, up starts looking a lot like down, and down starts looking something like up. The seasons turn and change, but the fighting don't seem to cease. I feel like I'm riding on a terrible roller coaster loop that just keeps looping. Welcome to Live from the Front Lines. I'm your host, Wali Wallace, and it's my job to bring you bipartisan coverage of this rage and war that's coming on outside, and to hopefully lighten the mood with a little bit of music that might soothe your soul during these hard times. Let's start things off with one I know you probably heard before. This song dates way back to the Civil War and celebrates a boy coming home again. The original lyrics read, "When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah. We'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah. The men will cheer and the boys will shout, and the ladies, they will all turn out, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home." Myself being born in the very, very late part of the 20th century, remember this song with slightly different lyrics. Something about tiny little black insects. According to American songwriter, it was that large purple dinosaur named Barney who first performed "The Ants Go Marching One by One." That was "The Ants Go Marching One by One." Thanks, Barney. Well, anyways, there's a lot we gotta cover today, and in times like these, we ain't got a moment to waste. I'm gonna take you into the foothills of Fenario and back up into the tall grass and the long acres of the old country. A young soldier suiting up into his uniform, which is 3 sizes too big, running outside in a firefight, shooting his rifle at what he thinks is the enemy, but is really just the reflection of the sun in his glasses in front of his eyes. This is war, folks. And you're with me, your old friend Wally, live from the front lines. And if you're hearing this broadcast loud and clear, that means that I'm safely tucked away behind a thick cabin door, out of sight of the enemy. And I've got nothing here besides my microphone and an intention to share this key information with my audience. And as you all know, I've faced a fair amount of trouble for providing the services that I do. But my listeners can trust the fact that I ain't going anywhere, especially during these trying times. Consider me your Tokyo Rose, the Japanese wartime radio host in World War II, who was charged with treason by the U.S. government and eventually pardoned by Gerald Ford in 1977. I can only say a prayer and hope that I receive some of the same mercy when all of this is said and done. I'd like to play another song. This one I first heard by the great Bob Dylan on his 1993 album, World Gone Wrong. Hey, maybe the world has gone wrong. This is a sad song about a boy who went off to fight with the hope of a love to return home to. Unfortunately, fate had a different idea for how that movie went. Here's two soldiers just a blue-eyed Boston boy. That was 2 soldiers. Thanks, Bob. There's a high-ranking soldier that goes by the name of Wing Commander William Goat, who, until now, had his story seldom told. But William Goat was one of those folks you just couldn't ignore. He wore beautiful golden pins and badges and ribbons on his horns and on his fur to signify his incredible victories and his high rank. But before all the glorious stories, there was just that nervous recruit standing in the mess hall. It was said that at one party he was left alone for just a few moments and ate 200 sandwiches and 3 cakes and the piano arrangements for some song that was supposed to be performed later that night. I won't go so far as to tell the whole tale of William Goat, but I will tell you that the English language falls short with words to describe his greatness. I could try to tell you stories of his courage in battle. I could try to symbolize with metaphors the ultimate respect that he had earned from his fellow soldiers. But you don't have to take my word for it. John Steinbeck wrote all about William in his 1958 novel Once There Was a War. Grant us victory, O Lord. So says the minister to a packed church on a fateful Sunday. It is the evening mass before the soldiers are set to march down upon the enemy. Flags wave in the wind. Bugles echo through the town square. Deep within the breast of every citizen burns the fire of war. Grant us victory, says the church in unison as an elderly man suddenly enters through the door and approaches the preacher, who with closed eyes does not notice him enter. The old man, claiming to be commissioned by God himself, attempts to explain to the preacher the true meaning of his prayer, grant us victory. If you would beseech a blessing upon yourself, beware, lest without intent you invoke a curse upon a neighbor at the same time. The old man enthusiastically recites a revised prayer, with all the unspoken words said. Help us cover their smiling fields with the pale forms of their patriot dead. Help us lay waste their humble homes with a hurricane of fire. Make heavy their steps, water their way with tears. Help us to drown the thunder of the guns with the shrieks of their wounded, writhing in pain. Amen. The old man was promptly removed and imprisoned for lunacy. Perhaps no other figure in the last century has personified war like Winston Churchill. His wartime ambition would be his legacy, and his words on the subject of war were always heavy. In July 1940, he addressed the House of Commons with words that would become famous. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. Let us therefore embrace ourselves to our duty and so bear ourselves that if the British Commonwealth and Empire lasts for 1,000 years, men will say this was their finest hour. The Kinks quoted this speech in their 1969 song, Mr. Churchill Says. Here goes.
thank you all for tuning in. This has been Live from the Front Lines with your host, Wali Wallace, and it has been such a pleasure to share these few minutes with you. Remember to keep your head on a swivel. Be safe out there, and I hope to see you again soon.